Hello, it's Lana from Sage and Sound again in video number 5 on targeting climate change anxiety. And today's video is about a different thinking style called catastrophizing. And catastrophizing means that when you're thinking about a future event, you imagine the worst possible outcome. Now, catastrophizing comes about because our brain is designed to protect us, and there's a benefit to catastrophizing in that if you imagine a bad outcome and there's something that you can do to prevent that outcome and you do it, then that's a good result. It can also be useful to us if you catastrophize, you imagine the worst possible outcome, and you develop a plan or strategy for coping with that. So not that you'd prevent it, but that you could accept and deal with it and be okay. So it's quite functional if it's used in those ways. However, for most of us, most of the time when we're catastrophizing, we are not using it functionally. So the ways in which catastrophizing becomes a problem, first up, the simple one, if you are thinking about something that you can do absolutely nothing to influence that's in the future, then catastrophizing is completely unhelpful. All it does is make you feel terrible, and part of the reason it does this is because imagining anything creates some stress, and if we imagine a negative event, it is somewhat like living through the event. Obviously it's nowhere near as intense, but you do generate some of the stress response. And the big problem with this is that we don't just catastrophize once about one thing, we actually work out all the little tiny different ways that a catastrophe could occur, and we don't think about these just once but over and over and over again. And because your stress response is being generated as part of this, really quickly you build up way more stress in yourself from imagining these possible negative futures than you would actually experience if you just went through the future itself. So again, if there's something you can do to prevent it, that stress is probably worth it, because then you don't actually go through the experience. But if there's nothing that you can do about it, and all you do is think about it and worry about it, all you're doing is sending your stress response higher and higher. And if you remember from the first video, the higher our stress response, the less able we are to take action, the more that we're in our emotion brain, so the more afraid or angry we feel, but the less able we are to think straight, to be able to concentrate, to be able to make good decisions. So while it's important to be informed about what's happening in the world, you've got to be really, really careful that you don't overload yourself with information, or you don't spend too much time in that catastrophizing space. So you need to ask yourself the question, can I do anything about that? So if the answer is no, it is not helpful to focus on it, and you're best off putting your energy and efforts and thoughts into something that you can change. You also create a really strong feeling of powerlessness, focusing on something negative that you can't change. So if there's nothing you can do about it, forget about it, put your head on something you can change. If you can do something about it, do it, and do it quick. So write a plan, and then once you've got a plan, write down the steps in your diary in terms of when you're actually going to execute that plan, so that you're limiting your need to continue thinking about it and continue generating the stress response. So unchecked, what tends to happen is that people do catastrophize, they think about the future and the worst possible outcomes, they just worry and worry and worry, they don't take any action, and all they do is generate a huge amount of stress until they feel completely overwhelmed, possibly depressed, and take no action. And our whole goal with this series is to get rid of the thoughts that we're having that stop us from being effective, that make us feel overwhelmed, and that mean that we can't take action. So catastrophizing, you got to have a think about whether it's actually helping you or not. If you can't change the future, it's not helping you, but if you can, make sure that you get a specific plan that's got dates attached to it in terms of when you'll take action, so that you're using the stress response that's generated to best effect. Now, as always, with any of these techniques, it can be tricky to figure out how do I apply that to my specific situation. So if you need help with that, then I do encourage you to go to our website, www.sage, S-A-G-E, and A-N-D, sound, sound.com.au, and click on the Book Now button so that you can book an appointment to talk more about this stuff. Talk next time. See ya.